interested in 16 going.
We're good.
We're good. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad you all could join us this evening. It's a little different than we would normally be doing for our openings. Normally, we would be out in the auditorium, having a few cocktails, having some snacks, before we moved into the gallery at 7 to talk about the work. I'm hoping that you all are joining us with beverages, trying to at least pretend that we're all together and enjoying ourselves. But nonetheless, I felt it was imperative that we open this show. I have been thinking about this exhibition for a long time. This year, we decided to celebrate Black women because it was the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. And while some African American women were able to vote during the September, were able to register in 1920, the majority of Black women weren't able to use their franchise until the Voting Rights Act. But nonetheless, they were very, very involved in their communities. They moved communities forward. They did that through collective effort. They did it through activism. And I felt like it was really important for us to celebrate women of color during this year and recognize all of the different fields that women of color participate in, whether it be in actual policy making or whether it be in, we started our conversation now with a discussion about Black women in the media even. And so as we move through this year, having this exhibition where we celebrate the shoulders that we all stand on, those women who are older than us, those women who guide us, those women who direct us, it's who through their examples that we hope to do our best work. This exhibition felt like this was the one that needed to be the thing that opened the Heritage Center when we opened to the public. And also to, and I will bring Lola in as we're moving into our conversations. And at 7 o'clock, I will step out of this. I will join the conversation, listening to the conversation. But I think, if I recall, I first saw the work in 2015 and have been imagining it for quite some time, imagining the color of it all, imagining the thing that I find the most attractive about Lola Flash's work is the way she manipulates that color so that it just kicks you in the head, really. And so while, looking at it on the computer would be great, seeing it in its full flesh would be much better. So let me tell you who's here with us. Leslie Scott Jones, who has been my partner in crime in our public program. So I'm going to say a little bit more about some of that. Lisa Drain is here with us, who is responsible for bringing Seeing Black to us. We've been working on this project for almost a year now, right, Lisa? It's been a good number of years. We've had some amazing conversations, and she's going to talk a little bit about it. And then Lola Flash is also here, as is Jessica Lynn. So we're all here, and we're really excited to get engaged. Lola, I got to tell you, putting in this show, so far, Leslie has seen it, I've seen it. You know who came to by to see it today? Frank Walker. He came to see it, yeah. And he was like, is that Mama? And I was like, yes, he's and so he was just enamored of the portrait. I think you may have to give him one or get him one or something, because he was really enamored of that portrait. And I think that his reaction to it also speaks in a lot of ways about the work, even because the way that you describe each one of these women in the labeling even feels really personal, as if these women that you photographed had made some impact in your life as well. So, but I don't want to talk too much about those kinds of things. Let me give it to Leslie for a minute. I'm coming back, trust me. I'm learning how to do all of this Zooming and orchestrating it in my mind. What you're also watching is my brain doing what it does. So Leslie, tell us a little bit about the public programming that we've been doing and what we're going to do in relationship to this exhibition.
Yes. So we have been working on the Evelyn Barber lecture series since the beginning of the year. Since March, of course, we've had to move everything to virtual, but we've been doing a lot. As Dr. Douglas mentioned, we started out with Women in Media. We did a Women in Clergy talk. We did a Women in Theater talk. The next talk that we have coming up on the 27th of October is a Women in Politics talk. And I am super excited about that because we have Senator Jennifer McClellan and Senator Mamie Locke in that conversation together. And we want to talk about two powerhouse women to have a conversation about politics with. They are it. Following that, we will have a one-on-one talk between Dr. Douglas and Dr. Ashley Farmer about her book, Reimagining Black Power. And it's an amazing book. And we are so excited that Dr. Farmer agreed to have this conversation with us. Because as you know, professors are super busy right now because instead of just going and standing in front of a class, they have to do everything virtually. And we're going to end the Evelyn Barber Speaker Series this year with the talk that is most tied to this exhibition, with a conversation with Black women over 70. And I'm going to let you stew on who's going to be on that panel, because I'm waiting for someone to confirm. They've said they're interested, but they have not definitively said yes. And when they say yes, it will blow your mind. So I'm just going to let y'all wait on that. Let y'all wait. But if you don't know about the Evelyn Barber Speakers Lecture Series, the series was begun because of a wonderful woman that lived her entire life here, went to Union, she went to UVA, she was an educator in this town for over 30 years. She was a seminal member of the Zion African Baptist Church, and she was their historian. She was the one who kept all of the records for that church. And so we wanted to name the series after her to celebrate her work of making sure stories were told, stories were saved, that we knew whose shoulders we stand on. So that's what this series is really about. It's about celebrating the people that got us to where we are today.
Yeah, she was important for the starting of the Heritage Center, and she used to hold me down every day. When I have a son who, he would come in and she'd say, "Leave the baby alone. He's growing the way he's supposed to grow." And that would be it. So, these women are important to us. Lola, let me ask you a question. And I know this is an unfair question to ask you, but I'm going to ask you. Of all the women that you have photographed, and some of them are fairly well known, like Aggie Gunn, fairly well known. Which one of these women would you say has made the biggest impact on your life in terms of how you know them?
That's a really hard question to answer, Andrea.
I know.
It's kind of like asking, like, which is your favorite child? You know what I mean? Kind of. But I would say probably, I think that probably the two oldest ones, Lottie and Miss Cooper Jackson, they're 96 and Miss Cooper is 103. And they both are so clear-headed. When I call, they're like, "Lola Flash, how you doing? I was reading this, I was reading that." Miss Cooper was very, she knew her kids went to nursery school with Angela Davis.
Wow.
She was the editor of Freedom Ways, which, as I understand, was kind of like the Bible back in the day. There weren't many Black publications, and she, through that, she got a lot of artists that were not really that well known that went on to become well known, involved in it. And to be 103 and just to be so still connected with what's going on in the world and still learning, and I say with all of them that I want to be like them when I grow up, but I think those two in particular. But I can't leave out with Teresa Price, who's right there on the very far left-hand side that you were talking about, Frank's mom. It's a very personal relationship I have with her because she is my mom's friend. She was my mom's friend, and I grew up learning about her. Mom would say, there was a little girl that lived across the street from my great-grandfather, my mom's grandfather, Charles H. Bullock. And so when they would go down to the for the summer when school ended, Mom would say the first thing she'd do would be to run across the street to play with her little friend Teresa Price. And you know, Teresa still lives there. It's kind of in the backyard of the center, right? And she still lives there. And when I come down, it's like, I guess I almost have like this kind of feeling of like being like my mom. And you know, mom would talk about like the train tracks, and you know, you could hear the train. I think the first time I went to stay with her, the train went by, and I almost cried because I heard all these stories about my mom and my Aunt Charlotte going down to the train tracks when they were a kid, and then coming back and getting in trouble because you know it was dangerous to play by the train. So it was a funny story, but also it's kind of a story that reminds you that when your parents or kids, that they did stuff wrong too. You know, you kind of forget that they got into trouble. And the same thing with Teresa. She's always just so, you know, Lola Flash, what are you doing? You know, what are you up to? You know, she's just, they just, you know, I guess it's like this joy de vivre. You know, they just have this, still have this zest for life. You know, and it's just, you know, I'm in my 60s now, you know, and so I think that probably by the time I get to 70, I might think that the project will be finished when I am actually able to do a self-portrait and put myself in it. But until that time, it's just this, I always get a little bit like I get like a natural high when I finish shooting. But for some reason with those women, I really just get this really kind of like buzz, you know, and it's buzz because, you know, life can be hard, but these women have gone through so much and they still have this, you know, joy of life and this open heart to people like me, all tattooed up and shaved head. And they don't look at me like I'm an alien, you know what I mean? They just like bring me into their homes. And so that's what I think that all those women share, is that they let me in their homes and they kind of give themselves to me, if you see how relaxed they look. And so, yeah, I mean, kind of a long-winded answer, but really all of it at the end of the day.
Well, I knew I was putting you on the spot because it is exactly like you say. But, you know, whenever you install a show, you come to love things, right? They're images that even as you're putting them on the wall, they become these images that you want to know who these people are. You want to be engaged with them. I was lucky enough actually I've been thinking about Miss Teresa for a long time, and I have her yearbook and from 1942, which she has been, where's my yearbook? Bring me my yearbook back. So I got a chance to go over there the other day to give her yearbook. And she was, as you describe her, telling jokes. You know, you worry about her because it's COVID and you're wondering, you know, how's she doing? Is she okay? But she was just being who she normally is, right? And we were standing on her back porch, you know, out in the sunshine, having a great time. So,
yeah, if I could just jump in real quick, because you know, after I photograph the women, I do an oral sort of conversation. I videotape it, and she was getting such a kick out of telling me the stories that she used to about when she, during segregation, and how, you know, because she's quite light skinned, she'd be standing in line at the movie theater. And the people would be waving her to the front and say, like, you don't have to stand there. That's, you know, for the colored people. And she wouldn't say she's colored. She would just stand there like, nope, I'm standing here, you know, and just the way that she dealt with that, you know what I mean? Like, and, you know, my mom used to always say, like, you know, that you have to laugh instead of crying. You know, I think that's kind of this kind of mantra that I think a lot of black and brown folks have learned, that, you know, you got to laugh, you know, and she definitely continues that spirit.
yeah. Can I ask you about one more person in the show that, you know, when I talk about who I've fallen in love with, it's Norma. And I'm going to just switch this a little bit just so that Norma comes into view for us. Right there. That's her. How'd you meet her?
So I got a grant from Art Matters back in 2011, and I went to Puerto Rico to do some portraits, basically. And a good friend of mine lives there, and she's a sculptor. Her name is Gladys Niepce. And so that particular weekend was a weekend when Norma was performing at all these different events. Her partner, Tite, is his nickname, and I can't tell you the rest of his name. But he had been someone who was a songwriter, and his songs were banned for a long time, and finally they were able to sing it. And I'm telling you, I went to like 4 different events where she was singing. She had these elaborate costumes on, and she was just singing, you know, dancing. And, you know, I was like, this lady has more energy than I do, you know. It was just amazing to see her sing. And so I, you know, immediately, as soon as I saw her, like you said, I fell in love with her. And I asked her if I could photograph her. So she lives in San Juan. So, you know, on my way home, I stopped in San Juan. And I have to tell you, when I showed up and she had her, you know, house dress on or muumuu on, I was kind of like, I tried not to show my disappointment because her outfits were just so elaborate, you know. And then I kind of had to rein it back because, you know, part of the series is about capturing the women in their natural habitat. And, you know, most women who especially, well, I can't say most women, many women just wear their house clothes around the house, right? They don't sit around dressed up like on Dallas or something, you know? So, and then beyond that, this background that she had, I mean, that's the way her house walked in. Like, you can see the light on her knee. That's actually the door. The door was open. So you come into the front door and she's got this kind of like, almost like altar, you know, that was just like, I was, you know, normally I say to people, the women, you know, where do you enjoy sitting? And I'll photograph them there. But she didn't have a choice. I was like, this is the background. This is just so, you know, I love symmetry, and it just says so much about her culture. So yeah, unfortunately she passed away several years ago. But Gladys was telling me that she made this cookbook. She was a painter, and she made a cookbook that had a lot of Puerto Rican recipes in it. But it also had like jokes in it. It had recipes when her family was challenged with money. So these recipes that people made, you know, that were easy and cheaper on the budget. It talked about traditions that they had for Sunday, you know, dinners and stuff. So it was like more than a recipe book. You know, it was kind of like a bit of their culture as well. But yeah, she was really an amazing person. Yeah.
This is definitely one of my favorites, so I can say that. I've spent a lot of time sort of moving her around the gallery and trying to figure out where best. And I think I ended up, you know, when people come in, they turn around, and I think I did that unconsciously, because I just sort of enjoy her smile and enjoy how happy she seemed to be having her picture taken.
Well, what I can see from the photographs, I think you did a stellar job, Andrea. I love the way it's hung. Thank you.
Thank you.
There was a lot of hanging and then re-hanging. There was a lot of, I don't like that one there. We should switch these two. Wait, go out of the room and come back and look at it. It was a lot of that for like 2 days.
Thank you for your patience.
I engage people in my process. It's always that way. But anyway, so you know, as we were thinking about the show, thinking about the reasons for this show, me knowing what I know about you and your career, I said to Lisa, you know, we've been doing this Seeing Black for quite some time, and I think Lola should be someone that we also include in this, because of you know, where you start in the 80s and whatever. So Lisa, why don't you give us a little bit of background on how you came to even create the program?
Sure, thanks, Andrea. Following August 11th and 12th of 2017, I proposed this series to Andrea that featured prominent Black photographers, basically because I was hoping to jumpstart a conversation about racial identity, social justice, and systemic racism. And I really wanted folks in Charlottesville to challenge themselves about what they thought of what the accepted notions of what it means to be Black in America. So this is the first program. I'm sorry, it's the fifth program in the series. We've featured Ruddy Roy, Wale Oyejede, Beatty Ross Smith.
Sheila.
Yeah,
Sheila Pre-Bright.
Sheila, right. So yes, we're thrilled to have Lola, and we usually, with these series, we usually pair the photographer on stage with a writer or an academic. And in this case, we have Jessica Lynn, which will be great. And then we also ask the photographer to engage with youth in the community. So every time we've had the photographers do a talk or a workshop with local high school students, and they also have often spoken with UVA students or Boys and Girls Clubs participants. So it's great because we try to get the photographer out in the community, not just on the stage. So thanks. We're thrilled to have you and Jessica tonight.
Yeah, it's been a really informative program. I think the high school kids, Lolo, everything that we've heard so far about your conversation with them was really meaningful. They seem to really have enjoyed that conversation. I'm interested to see what kind of work comes out afterward. What did you think about it?
Yeah, I had a really great time. I mean, maybe it sounds a little bit silly, but it was nice to see their faces. My students, I'm also a high school teacher, and my students don't show their faces. So it's just kind of bizarre to have these conversations with looking at people's names and anime characters. So it was nice to see their faces so I could see, like, what I was saying, maybe if they kind of looked surprised or they looked happy, or, just to see a little bit of emotion was really nice. Yeah, it was a great opportunity to be able to share my work. I love Charlottesville so much. And yeah, it felt like I went to Charlottesville for a day, and I really enjoyed the teacher. I'm sorry, I've forgotten her name, but she was really very engaging, and she seemed to really want, to use my work in a really powerful way, and so that kids could talk about their identity or talk about others' identities. I think at high school age, I don't think I even knew what the word identity meant. So I think for them to be considering their identity and others' identities is really important, for their growth and for their kind of understanding of where they're going, and understanding others, challenges and journeys. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thank you for the opportunity, Lisa. And I hope to be able to talk to the UVA kids as well.
Yeah, I think, when we really think about our young people, they are so much more savvy about their world than we are, or we were. I think they're being forced to consider things that it just wasn't our time,
Mm-hmm.
And so they're using language that's in their everyday parlance that I certainly didn't start using until I was, had already started graduate school in some ways, gotten my post-colonial theory under my belt. So it's a different age for sure. So and their production of work is so very thoughtful. So I'm really glad that this program has been working out and that we've been able to engage some very, very, very strong artists who come to the work from this really interesting theoretical space for them too, to sort of broaden the language and give them the visual counterpart to the knowledge that they're getting. So I think they've gotten a lot out of it, and the work will show it. So I think.
And I also, sorry, can I just jump in real quick? I also think that I'm really, I don't know if proud is the right word of you all for, for so long, I never really wanted to exhibit in galleries and museums. That wasn't really the audience that I was looking to have discussions with. And I think by having these, these talks with students, makes them less afraid of going to institutions like yours, and gives them a window into how artists think. For me, I remember I used to look at my friend had a lot of posters up, and they had like dates on them, and I was like, that's not the horoscope. I was like, what are those dates? And and I realized in hindsight now, it's like, oh, those were shows, the shows, and because when I was a kid, I never went to any art shows. So I think that's really great that you all are doing that, to just dispel the mystery.
Yeah. So we're going to segue a little bit. We're going to get ourselves ready to move to the second part of the program. And while we're doing that, we'll give people an opportunity to take a look at some of the work. And then I'm going to come back and introduce again Lola and Jess to the audience, and you all will engage in conversation.
Okay, so according to my director, Leslie Scott Jones, we're at the part where I begin to introduce our conversants tonight. Let me start with Jessica Lynn. Jessica Lynn is a writer and art critic. She's a founding editor of Arts Black, an online journal of art criticism from Black perspectives. Her writing has been featured in publications such as Art America, The Believer, Freeze, The Nation, Long Reads, and elsewhere. She's currently at work on a collection of essays about love, faith, and the American South. I'm looking forward to reading that. Jessica lives and works in coastal Virginia. Lola Flash uses photography to challenge stereotypes and offer new ways of seeing that transcend and interrogate gender, sexual, and racial norms. She received her bachelor's degree from Maryland Institute and her master's from London College of Printing in the UK. Flash works primarily in portraiture with a 4x5 film camera, engaging those who are often deemed invisible. In 2008, she was a resident at Lightwork, and in 2015, she participated at Alice Yard in Trinidad. Flash was awarded an Art Matters grant, which allowed her to further 2 projects in Brazil and London. In 2019, she was artist in residence at Center for Photography at Woodstock. Flash's work included important public collections such as the Victoria and Albert Museum in London and the Brooklyn Museum. Her work is also featured in the publication Posing Beauty, edited by Deborah Willis, currently on exhibition across the US. Flash co-led a talk at the Bronx Museum with Sir Rodney Sir. They spoke to the glaring lack of women artists and POC with respect to the AIDS America exhibition. Pen and Brush Gallery's inaugural exhibition in 2018 featured a 30-year retrospective of her significant photographs. In 2019, her next solo show took place in London at Autograph Gallery. Her most recent exhibition is at Blue Door Gallery in Baltimore. We're happy and pleased to invite both Jessica Lynn and Lola Flash to Charlottesville. Thank you both for coming. Thank you both for engaging with us. I'm going to turn the conversation over to the 2 of you. And again, I appreciate the work. I appreciate the show. You and Jessica, thanks. I look forward to meeting you in person when you come down to Charlottesville.
Thanks, Andrea, and Leslie, and Lisa, and Lola. Thank you for having me this evening. Lola, it's great to be in conversation with you again. 2 years now since the solo exhibition at Pen and Brush. I'm very thankful for this. I kind of wanted to jump right into SALT, since this is the occasion that brings us together. And you've spoken a little bit about the women and what they mean to you personally on an individual level. And I'm just curious if maybe you could talk a little bit more about why the visualization of these women elders, especially kind of in this context when youth is such a priority often in dominant culture. What compelled you to kind of even take up this portraiture project, and what are you hoping that we as viewers kind of rethink, especially when we consider the way elders play an important but often maybe invisibilized role in broader society?
Yeah, Jessica, it's great to see you again. The last time that you moderated the panel that I was on, a pen and brush, I thought you did a really stellar job, and you were the first person I thought of to do this talk with me. So
Thank you.
nice to see you virtually. um, well, there are kind of several different things. I think sometimes just like sitting on the bus, looking at different older women and thinking like, wow, I wonder what their story is. Like you just see these women, and I think that's one of the things that's great. Well, was great about New York is being on public transport. You get to see people a little bit closer than if they're driving by in your car. And I just think, what is their story? I think another thing is that I didn't take a proper picture of my grandmother or my mother. Not with my 4x5 camera. Of course, I took snapshots of them, and so this is kind of like in homage to them. And then also just being a female who is so aware of the fact that when we're young, when we're sort of like 18 to 28, that's like our heyday, and that's when movies want us, magazines want us, and then sort of 28 to 30, and all of a sudden a new host of younger girls comes in, and you look at someone like George Clooney, who I think is a really handsome guy, and but you don't have another woman that is sort of his parallel. You see these aging guys, holding these roles in films, and they have these young women, usually blonde, and there's just not that parallel to women's careers. Women actors just don't have that kind of like that sensuality, the sexuality that men have. The media doesn't. The women have it, but media doesn't show it. So I really wanted to talk about the beauty. And in fact, when I was in Tobago, no, Trinidad, my bad. And I was speaking with this one woman, and she was so excited to get her picture taken. And she said, "Oh, I'll call my friends and see if they want to be in it." And I was just like, "Great," And she's like, "What do I tell them?" I said, "Well, tell them that they need to be over 70, and that generally someone that's kind of doing something. I'm not really looking for couch potatoes. Like people that are still." In their communities doing work, even if they're home doing paintings, but they're still active, they're still sort of making their points." And I said, and they're beautiful, and she said, "Well, I'm not beautiful." And my heart just sunk, you know what I mean? Like I thought she was just beautiful, her husband had just passed away, but she was still willing to invite me into her home. And so, really for all of my models, I photograph just their beauty. And I think that's why a lot of people will say yes to me, because they know I'm there to photograph their beauty. And I said the other day that, even if it's just for those 2 hours that I'm there, they know that I've come with my big old camera and set up to photograph their beauty. And so hopefully that they've seen their beauty, or they've felt their beauty in other places. It's like the power I'm able to say, "You are beautiful, and I'm going to come photograph you." And I think that when our looks leave us, we forget about that beauty that we have, because the media says that this is what beauty is. And I think when you come from other cultures, when you're not just American, that grandparents are really important families. that beauty. And so that's really what it was about, and it's so sweet because people, ask their grandmas or their aunties and, talk about there. It's like, everyone gets involved.
Yeah.
It's been a really project inside their homes because it just gives you that little bit extra, like Andrew was saying, like to be able to see them in person, you can see the textures and you can see all the little bits and pieces, the dolls or the family photos, that really kind of give you more information about that individual that I photographed.
Yeah. And one thing that you said that I have been thinking about a lot with regard to this project is specifically the idea that in so many other non-Western cultures, right, the tradition of like the reverence for the elder is so front and center. And that, if you often are finding yourself in like a US, particularly a US centric mode, that the way in which those folks who really are the salt of the earth, right, who keep us going, who are like the folks kind of transmitting knowledge, like it's really a shame the way media in particular can kind of create this illusion that you have no real value after, like you said, especially for women folks, right, 30. And so I really appreciate that point because I think I'm especially kind of being reminded of that in a moment like 2020 when so many of us are rethinking our relationships to one another, especially the elders in our lives. So I really appreciate you kind of being explicit about that. And I think maybe connected to this, I wanted to ask, you said earlier, you are contemplating including your own self in the project when you kind of reach that age bracket, 70 and over. And it got me thinking about like what it means for a project to kind of move from conception to end. And I guess I'm curious for you as a photographer, how do you decide when a project is quote unquote over? Like what does finite look like for you? What does kind of mistake and revision look like for you in that setting? And how do you know that something it's time to kind of put a nice bow on something, artistically speaking?
Jessica, I have no idea. All of my, whenever I write about my work, my artist statements is always says ongoing series, and when I see people finish, I think even actually they mentioned Sheila Pre-Bright, I asked her one time because, I went to her show and I just love her. And, she had this finished series, like, Sheila, how do you know that it's finished?
Yeah.
I think part of the thing that it makes it hard for me is because really all of my work, I take this global approach to it. Like Andrew was saying, like those are all pictures taken all over the place because I think maybe part of it has to do with the fact that I lived in London for 12 years and I sort of, was able to see America from afar and see other places from afar and other places closer. And, there's just so many different, like, for instance, in Trinidad, when I was there and I asked women about the salt ladies about racism, they were kind of like, we didn't grow up with racism, even though there were like Chinese people, there were other cultures in their neighborhood, but they didn't have that racism. In fact, one of them, Merlin, who's photographed in her kitchen, she's actually in Tobago. She said she didn't know racism until she went to America. So many people who live on the islands come to America to work, and then they often go back home to retire, and that's what she did. But she was a dancer in America, and she said, she just couldn't figure out what it was. I think she said something about she was at a gas station, and the cops just pulled them over. Came. They were like, "What are you doing?" And so she told me about various incidents that she had with the police that was just so foreign to her, and the same sexuality. Even though things are kind of better in America, it looks like they might be taken away from us some of the rights that we already have.
Yeah.
Of course, places like Jamaica and other places, it's much more dangerous to be openly gay. So all these different kind of isms that I'm dealing with in my work, I want to see how it is in your country. I think again, like America tends to be just so, America-centric, and there's so many other stories going on. There's so many other good and bad things that are happening that, but the good thing about that is that whenever I travel someplace, I can always photograph each of my series. So when I was in Trinidad, for instance, I was able to shoot, I think I got about 12 women and people were just offering up their grandmas in Trinidad. Yeah. And then I got my Surmise series done. I got Surpassing done. Yeah, I think I got like 3 or 4 series, done. So if and when I get the funds to travel, I can really kind of jump in and get a lot of work done. So
Yeah.
get some more grants so I can access travel. And once this epidemic is over,
Absolutely. I'm hoping that as well. I think that one of the things I've always appreciated about your work, and even I was thinking back to when we saw each other at Basel, Miami, last winter, and kind of walking with you through newer work, the insistence that you take on portraiture as the mode, right? And what pathways that offers for you. And so I guess for those who may be in the conversation who are less familiar with what that means in the context of your larger studio practice, could you talk a bit about your commitment to portraiture and what that form in relationship to image making enables you to do as you ask these questions of the world around kind of sexuality, identity, art and activism, and the like?
You're so good, Jessica.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, for me, portraiture is definitely front and center. Really, one of the main reasons that I feel it's important to be focused on portraiture is because, it might sound simplistic, but I never saw myself growing up. Now I do see magazines with people of color on them. Back in the day when I was a kid, it was Ebony, Jet, and then Essence, and even then I didn't see myself. I didn't see, a girl that looked like this, and still this kind of face is not readily seen. I mean, people like Lena Waithe is making it possible for us to see a more varied type of folk, on TV at least. And thanks to, Netflix and Hulu, we're seeing a host of imagery of brown and Black people, which are more representative. And even kind of like, sometimes I'd watch TV and I'd be like, why can't that sister be gay? Like why can't there just be shows where gay people are part of the family? Why do we have to have a whole gay show? It doesn't have to be the gay show. It can, I always be like, that person could be gay. Why can't the postman be gay? You know what I mean? It's just kind of, it just because that's how it is. It's not like this whole kind of so really just the biggest part about me being into portraiture is that I wanted to see myself and I want other people to see themselves. So I really kind of like, once I'm shooting, I'm making like little marks, like, okay, I've got two brown people. I've got okay, I need an Asian person. I need a Korean person. I need, you know what I mean? Okay, well, I still need a Japanese person and, a Chinese person, like I want to make sure that I'm recording as many different people as I can, because Black, brown, if you're not white, 9 times out of 10, you're not seeing yourself, and if you are seeing yourself, you're seeing again, like this kind of media hodgepodge of either like this appropriated image or this down and out person. And even, back to SALT, it's like you see pictures of older people who like have health issues, who have, I don't know, who need diapers or something. And it's like, that's not what I think. When I think of my grandma, I think of someone who was intelligent, who was smart, who, that group of people, they were so brave to, do what they did. They were homeowners. They were able to, without even like finishing high school, they were able to buy houses and create these homes for their kids, you know? So it's really about representation. And I feel like it's my responsibility, you know, it's my narrative, and I feel like who better to tell it than myself. And I think sometimes, I think maybe it's part of the era that I come from too. I think that, you know, I went through the civil rights, I went through gay rights. And so, you know, not that it's post any of those things, but I see some of the younger artists coming up and they don't feel the need to be a representative. And I'm not judging anyone, but I think because I've kind of been through the struggle, you know what I mean? It's that I feel that, again, like, who better to tell the story than me? I mean, I'm lately, you know, people seem to be getting to know my name a little bit more, and it's really great to have the recognition, but it's not like the Lola Flash show to me at all. It's about bringing everyone forward, you know, and I like to say that I'm like the modern day, oh my God, Harriet Tubman, my bad. It's like the modern day Harriet Tubman, because, you know, Harriet didn't say, y'all, the river over there to Ohio is over that way, and the moon's out, so y'all good luck. You know what I mean? She went and got the people and she brought them back. She went and got some more people and she brought them back, you know? So I feel like any success that I am getting or garnishing is bringing everybody else forward. And so, you know, as much as I'm so happy to be an artist, I think that my activism is really the thing that kind of like pushes me to make these statements, to find these people, to show a different side, the beautiful side that we don't always see. So that's like my purpose in life, you know.
I want to come back. I want to put a pin in the activism comment, but I'm just curious, like, do you ever find yourself frustrated within that larger goal, right? That, like, are there moments when you're sitting back and kind of assessing, even if you look at like a marker from like 1980 to early 2000s, or, you know, like, is there ever a moment when you're like, like it hasn't quite clicked mainstream yet, you know? And like, if so, like, what does that feel like, and how do you move through that through your work?
Yeah, I think so. Especially because nowadays, like, a lot of the young artists are such are really like multimedia. You know, they do everything. You don't, you know, I kind of feel like more like James Van Der Zee, you know, in this kind of very classical kind of portraiture. And you know, whenever I go to art fairs, I always see like photographs with painting on them, or they're, you know, chopped up and, you know, hanging. And I find some of that work interesting, but you know, it kind of made me want to just continue to have my big old 4x5 and shoot on film. It just made me more committed to this tradition, you know. And I always feel funny, like, when I say tradition, because I think when I look in the mirror, I don't look to me like someone who is traditional, but I am very traditional. I'm all about, like, you know, I shoot with like one of the hardest cameras to use. I shoot with the lowest ASA film. I really make it like as hard as possible for me to make these images. So no, I don't feel frustrated, because again, it's so much of it for my whole career has been about the models, you know, and it's great to be showing in different places now. But I never really, you know, I'm not a competitive person. I'm really happy for anyone who, you know, achieves any kind of success. But I think, you know, when you were talking about the work I had in Miami, that is a real departure from my portraits, you know, because it's a self-portrait project. Just for those of you who don't know, I'm doing a new series called Syzygy, The Vision, and it's about Afrofuturism. And I actually am the person in the photograph, so it's kind of a self-portrait series. And it's kind of combines all of the different things I've been working in. And it's not, you know, it's a lot about my imagination. And, you know, I wear a astronaut helmet, and I wear scrubs, like I wear orange prison clothes. And there's lots of symbols in there around, you know, freedom or lack of there. And so it's much more conceptual. It's conceptual. It's, you know, at the end of the day, and I never kind of understood conceptual work, but I think mine is kind of like conceptual work, like 101, or it's, you know, because I'm making the symbols I'm using, I'm making it, hopefully I'm making it very easy for, you know, the common folk to be able to read it and understand what I'm saying. I think that's sometimes the problem I have with conceptual work is like, I have to read what it is to understand what it is. And, you know, I have a degree in art. I should know what this means, you know, but more to the point that it's kind of a liberation in a way, because I'm able to use real things and then make my own narrative about it. So I think it's probably, especially during these times, it's probably come at a perfect time, because I can't really photograph people. I can't really do portraits now. I can't go to people's houses. And so, you know, it's really been an amazing release for me to be able to continue working and talking about COVID, talking about Black Lives Matters. I mean, many of us Black artists have been talking about Black Lives Matter from day one. So it's not something new, but it's this new series, Syzygy, is just, I guess my point is that Syzygy has really kind of just opened up my vernacular, my way of storytelling, but it's steeped in all the different things. It's steeped in salt. It's steeped in all the other series that I've done. So it's not really new. It's kind of like I've done like homework for like 40 years. And now I'm able to like put all that homework that I've done into this new series. So it's super exciting.
Yeah, I like that like this is like an offering that almost feels like inevitable based on how you've been working and the communities you've been steeped in and the folks that you've been in community with, right? That is leading to a place. And I hope folks get a chance to experience that project too, that series in person in particular. And so I kind of want to come back to this activism pen, because I came to your work through a study of artists working and taking up kind of a relationship to organizing and cultural organizing in particular. And one of the things I've been thinking about this year, amongst many, is how younger artists who are queer, artists of color and non-white, to me, there seems to be, maybe to Andrea's point earlier this evening, a way in which they're using a language that they have had access to for so long, right? They're using this language to point towards systemic injustice, excuse me. And I think that it's really exciting to watch and witness. And for a lot of people, it feels new and it feels invigorating. And yet I think if you are someone who's been deep in study about the relationship between art and organizing, you know that even what we're seeing now exists within a continuum, right? And that those artists are in fact learning from artists of your generation, right, who have laid groundwork and pathways. So I guess this is a long way of one, acknowledging your relationship to that work, and then hoping you could talk a bit about what brought you to the intersection of art and activism, because we know not every artist chooses to engage or work that way, right? And then perhaps maybe specifically if there's time, your work with ACT UP. And then I'm curious to know what you are seeing and noticing in this generation of artists who are choosing to kind of take a relationship to cultural organizing. Like, what's exciting you in that regard? What are you hoping to see more of, and things like that?
Yeah, well, just as you were saying, ACT UP, I was definitely thinking that was definitely my window into activism. You know, growing up, I was, you know, just too young to go to any of the civil rights movements, you know, civil rights demonstrations. And then the Vietnam War was a really big deal, and I was just too young. When I got to college, I remember there was like some Iranian demonstrations in Washington I would go to, and going to college at the Maryland Institute in Baltimore, we were right next to DC. So to be honest with you, we used to actually go to demonstrations because they had such good entertainment afterwards. Like I saw like Joni Mitchell and, I have to say like, I was a kid.
How could you not?
Yeah. But then, I graduated from college in 1981, and that was the first year that someone was diagnosed with HIV. And, before I knew it, I feels like I was kind of thrust into this, pandemic. And in fact, one time when I was going home for a cousin's funeral, I started putting all the pieces together, and I was just like, I think he's died from AIDS. That was before. And surely he had been a drug, IV drug user, and I didn't have any idea. And no one wanted to talk about it in the family. And then several years later, I found myself in New York, and it was kind of the height of the AIDS pandemic, and I don't even know how I got into ACT UP. It's like it seems like maybe I got off the plane and then I was in ACT UP. Like it was this crazy transition. And talk about agency and talk about urgency. Your friend tells you, like, goes to the dentist and finds out that he or she is HIV positive, and 2, 3, 4 weeks later they're gone. And so there was really this kind of like, we have to do something about this. And, the city wasn't doing anything about it. The New York Times wasn't reporting on it. The media, sometimes I laugh, when I see them at Gay Pride, because, I remember we used to go to Gay Pride, and, we'd say, or maybe call my mom or call a friend, say, did you see anything on the news about the Pride March? And they're like, no. And now it's like they're all over it, which is great, but at that time there was this real need to get out there in the street and get some things done. And I have to say that we did get a lot of things done. And even now, people with HIV are able to get better housing, for instance. Of course, the drugs are, they're down to like one pill as well, as opposed to like, this like bomb, multi pills they used to have to take. So I think that really kind of was like, and to be honest with you, Jessica, I actually used to say that I wasn't going to take a pretty picture until the AIDS epidemic was over. And when I got to my 40s, still wasn't over. And there still wasn't a cure. And I was like, girl, you need to take a little break, So I started doing my Sense of Autumn series, which is just going back to basic, taking pictures of like beaches and just kind of different textures and light and composition. And, I kind of call them my watercolors. And it was, it is a nice, it was a great release to be able to just take a pretty picture, just look at colors, and just, not have to. And also, like when I was younger, I didn't do photo shoots. I would just go around and like a little detective and see things that I liked and take pictures. So it was kind of, reminiscent of my earlier childhood, my early photo days. And so that was really the impetus for me to be like, okay, girl, we gotta really like talk about these issues and talk about racism, talk about sexism, talk about homophobia. And now, transphobia is a real big issue. So definitely the AIDS and HIV work totally just made me be like, this is my commitment. And I don't think though, when I was in my 20s, that I realized that I was actually making a lifetime commitment. And even when I blew out a candle, and made that wish, I don't really know. I suppose that's one of the things that's kind of beautiful about getting older, is that you have so much to reflect on. I can reflect on the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, and it's, you can kind of maybe make sense of things that you were doing just because like innately you knew that was the right thing to do. But you can also verbalize it in a way, or even in your mind contextualize like what you were doing. So all that to say that I think that some of it was just kind of this natural movement through what I felt was the right thing to do. And I think that the Pen and Brush show, I think, was also a very it was a real eye opener to me to be able to see all of my work together at one glance, see work that I'd done like in the 80s, and then another glance, see the work that I had done maybe just a couple of weeks ago, and to see the continuity and to see that. Because I think I had this idea that I kind of took off some time, or like I was not as productive as I thought I was. And I thought, I like looked at that and I was just like, wow, you've really been like working a lot. And what you've been saying is really very much the same. Even in my cross color stuff where I, changed the colors around, I was still saying the same thing. So it's like, this long, I guess like autobiography or something, that I've created. So I think that all of it wasn't as conscious as now I know it is.
Yeah. It's like that kind of age-old expression, or maybe not expression, but the form follow function, or it's function kind of following form, right? And like as you kind of take up cross-color work and kind of think through the way portraiture shows up in some of the different projects, from Surpassing to Salts and Prince of Autumn, like all of these works, it also brings me to the point where I'm thinking about kind of, when I know one thing we've talked about too is kind of like the role of the critic in relationship to the artist, right? And how in a moment when you have created a body of work that spans decades and yet it's still kind of pushing out a central question, the way critics and art historians and writers are able to help kind of crystallize and contextualize some of those central themes that in real time making work, you may not be able to articulate as eloquently as you want, right? But that intellectual partnership that occurs becomes, or it takes on such a higher level of significance, right? Because now you are ready to kind of assess and analyze and kind of evaluate what exactly has been happening throughout a lifetime of work. And I think,
yeah, it's so true. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no. Go. I was just saying, like, I think that is one of the things that keeps me kind of coming back to this question about the intersection between art or corporal organizing, right? That the remnants and tentacles of that work kind of spill out into so many other different areas of the artist practice, I think. And maybe connected to that, I'd love to know, because I know that you use the word tradition, and I certainly would not consider you a quote unquote traditional person, but I do know that study and lineage matters to you, both as kind of a person in the world trying to do good and right, and also an artist who is thinking critically and intently about your work. And could you talk a bit about some of the traditions that you find yourself coming out of as a photographer? And those could be kind of photographic traditions, certainly, but then more broadly, maybe kind of traditions of cultural study. Like, who are you reading? Like, who are you kind of going to for mentorship and that feedback for someone to say, like, Lola, this might not be it's entirely. What if you think about this? Like, what does that part of your practice look like?
Well, I'm a member of Convey, and Convey is I think probably one of the oldest Black photography collectives. It started in the 60s, and I don't know if anyone got to see, the University of Virginia just did this amazing series of workshops with them, highlighting several of the sort of beginning members. So sometimes we get a chance to share our work and we talk about our work, but definitely looking at their work and knowing that that they're the ones who open the doors for me. I haven't really been able to read during this period. It's just, I read articles. I have like a host of books about Afrofuturism, for instance, that I just can't seem to find the headspace to read. But like, I've been listening to a lot of George Clinton, and I love my girl Missy Elliott.
Yeah.
Of course, Hank Willis Thomas. I love the variety of work that he does. It really makes me think about photography and how you can really push it to so many different levels. He does 3D work. Some work he does, you have to like look at it a certain way to be able to see it. I love that. Yeah, I love that he has just so many ways to speak his mind. Of course, my girl Carrie May. Well, Tony Barboza, he's in Kamonge. He's one of my favorite photographers. I like to read poetry, reading, or I think back on Octavia Butler. I think about those stories. I think poetry is one thing that I have enough attention span to read those things. And I when I have sort of like downtime, or when I get kind of tired, I just kind of like maybe look at some things that Angela Davis has written. I think sometimes that, like there's so many people that have already gone through this struggle and they've done some really good work. And so that kind of makes me feel like, okay, it's not just me, because I think sometimes photography feels kind of like alone. It's like a loner's kind of thing. It's not like you're a dancer and you're working with a dance group, So sometimes when I'm finding it hard to create or to keep my hope going, I'll read, articles that people send me. But yeah, I can't say that I have one particular person that I really kind of come back to. My friend Sue Akem, who's we went to college together. I often talk to her about my work, and just like she suggested that she was looking at some of my new pictures for Syzygy, and she was saying that she felt like, because she knows me, she felt like some of the poses were like a little stiff, and that maybe I should think about like, and when she said that, because I know her so well, I didn't get defensive. Immediately I thought, maybe I should do some like improv classes, because I'm emoting. I know what I'm emoting.
In your body.
Yeah, I'm emoting anger. I'm emoting, frustration at this time in the project. Eventually, for Syzygy, I say I'm going to be jumping from planet to planet. This kind of with this black joy. That's how that story is going to end. 100 photos down. But I started thinking maybe I'll start doing maybe I can probably even find like some improv YouTube thing online that I can actually start doing too, because, I'm a real perfectionist and I want, like, maybe other people don't see it, but if Sue sees it, then I want to fix that. Yeah.
I think that's great. I mean, I think we're all pulling from so many different points of reference often, and so it's lovely to hear like your palette as an artist. Like I have a deep love for Missy Elliott. We are from the same place, so like these different references and touchstones that maybe they don't like explicitly show up in the work, but they're like bubbling underneath. So I appreciate that wholeheartedly. And I think now we are going to open it up to questions. I don't know, Andrea or Leslie, if we have enough time to take a few, if I should be mindful of one or two. But otherwise, I'll go ahead and jump in. I see some that are coming in.
We have we have one question, and we are open for questions right now. So,
okay.
So we'll just see how it goes.
Okay, cool. And so I see one, and let me know, Leslie, if I need to go to another place to see them all. But there's a question that I'm seeing now, which asks Lola, as creative, do you feel a civic duty to educate and enlighten? And this is from Ready Rock.
Thank you, Ready Rock. That's my purpose in life. For a long time, both my mom and my dad were teachers, and they put me through art school, and I didn't have to pay a dime. And after a couple of years of me being like a waiter and a bartender, I pretty much took every job that didn't need a college degree, because I was really committed to being a photographer. And my mom kept pushing me to be one. And I think it took me till I got into my 30s, and she kept, every time she said pension, I'd start like doing like a sort of Bart Simpson kind of like, like, what is she talking about? And I finally kind of decided maybe I should, think about being a teacher. I think I thought that it was going to take away from my creative juices, but it did the opposite. It actually informed it. It actually made me think about other things that I would never think about, and then be able to mentor people, like on like nice kitten shots or something, like. And I think that, yeah, it's really empowering to be a teacher in a classroom, but also to be able to use my work as a tool for education. So for me, totally a civic duty. That's and I don't judge anyone else who doesn't feel that way, but that's why I was saying to Andrew that I loved being able to talk to the students at Charlottesville. And I think I have to say there is a selfish part of me that knows that girls of color, that trans folk of color don't have a lot of role models, a lot of positive role models. So I think, sorry about that. So I think that I feel a particular need to create that for those kind of folks, to say that I see you, and I'm going to listen to what your story is, and I'm going to help you put it out there in the world, and I think that I've had teachers of all different colors that have been able to help push me forward. But like when I think of like Dr. Leslie King Hammond, who taught me at Maryland Institute of Art, she, I mean, you know her, don't you? I mean, anyone, big smile comes on their face, and usually people say like, "Oh, Leslie helped me with this. Leslie helped me with that." She's, and I think of her as a mentor, and I think of her as someone who I want to be like, and I hope that people, think of me in the same way that they do of her, because, it's just like, yeah, like when I think about my students, I think, God, I hope that they all think about me like the way I think about Leslie, because she gave me this joy of art. She made it like easy for me to learn about it the way that she talked about it. She invited me into the art world in a way that I hadn't been, because we were the same. So it wasn't like, it felt achievable. I felt like, oh, I can learn about all these different people, because Leslie, like you could tell she loved it. You could see the passion in her. And so the fact that she loved these different artists made me think, oh, maybe I could love them too. It just wasn't so foreign. So yeah, totally. That's my duty. Yeah. I don't know if you see like a teacher written across my forehead here. Maybe that should be my next tattoo.
So I'm going to take the opportunity because I have two questions. My first question is SALT finished?
No, I would say I think that SALT will finish when I'm 70. So in another 9 years. So in another decade, SALT will be finished, I believe. But who knows? You know what I mean? Like, I'm saying that now, but if I'm anything like any of my, my models, I'm probably going to say, actually, I think it's going to finish when I'm 100, like, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I have two women in mind for you to photograph next.
Yes.
And one of them is my mother, who is 73 and busier than I am.
She sounds like a perfect candidate.
Yes, there was actually an afternoon where my daughter, who was 19 at the time, was hanging out with her for a day. And my mother took a picture of my daughter asleep on the kitchen table after eating dinner, because that's how like she could not hang.
What's her name?
Her name is Dolores.
Okay. Okay.
And
please text me.
Absolutely. My second question is, you talk a lot about being a teacher, being an educator, being a role model. how has that given back to you? Because I mean, I'm not a photographer, I'm a theater artist, but I have found that the greatest joy that I have gotten is when another artist in my field says to me, wow, thank you for pushing me to do that. It was amazing. Or thank you for thinking I could do that. And I'm just wondering if you've had any of those moments in your career that have kind of stuck with you.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the ones that are sort of in the forefront of my mind. I've been doing a lot of work with this organization called Queer Art, and they have a mentorship program. And the first time I went and I sort of met some of the, soon to be mentees, this young lady came up to me, and she was Asian. I think she's Chinese, and she looked at me, and tears just started rolling down her eyes, and she said, your work has meant so much to me. And she was like crying, and I just hugged her. I didn't know what to do, and it was really very heartfelt. And it also reminded me that I'm always going on about Black and brown folks, and that my work has a further reach. It made me think about all the other people that don't see themselves. And, it really, really took me back. It really made me think about like I said, the far reach that my work does have. That was really something. And now my mentee that I ended up choosing, Felly Maynard, they just kind of blossomed. The work they're doing is just amazing. They're going to be in a show at the High Museum in Atlanta. They just made this amazing little short film. They're moved into other areas. My initial love of Felly's work was because they work with a 4x5 camera like myself, and they're reimagining history using old wet plate processing. And I just thought that was so clever, especially, like I said, because so many people are sort of using technology and, sort of this multimedia thing, and the way that Felly was talking about their work. And I think that it was always there in their work. I think it was always there in their heart. But I think that my encouragement and my saying, you can do it, Felly, I feel like that it was definitely part of the process of helping Felly grow. So, I mean, Queer Art has just been amazing for me. I'm on the board now. I've never been on the board before, so that feels pretty cool. But those are two instances where I see that where it's come back to me, and it's it's like if I make someone dinner, I don't expect for them to give me dinner back, but it is kind of nice to. It's nice for it to come back. It is definitely kind of it feels good for the soul, for sure. Yeah.
Leah has a wonderful comment and question for you, Lola. She says, this was an amazing presentation, and they see why the students at Charlottesville High School were so enthralled with you. And so her question is, how would you advise us to keep students engaged in the world of art? This is a really great question.
It is. It's something I think of every day when I'm planning for my students. I make it I make it real, I make it funny, and I make it accessible. I like to show work by a lot of my friends, to be honest with you. I have so many talented friends. And even people that I don't know, like back in the day when we used to go to openings, I would make sure that I get a photograph with the artist. And so, so let's use Hank as an example. So, when I'm showing Hank's work, then at the end, I'll have a picture of Hank and I, and I'll say, and here's Miss Flash and Hank Willis. Like, you guys, when you get a little older, you can just go into Manhattan or even there's so many galleries in Brooklyn now, you can go there and you can actually meet the artist, you know? And so that's one way that makes them realize that, oh, it's accessible. This isn't like some old dead artist. This is actually someone who looks like me or my brother or my cousin. And, you know, not that they have to be artists, but at least that they can feel more welcome in that space because that person is kind of like them. I mean, that's one of the things I do. And yeah, just kind of, I like to make the work easy for them to do. So we use like right now we're using canva.com, which is a free online program that's really quite colorful and fun for them to use. They can even import other images into canva.com, but they can make posters, and right now they're making billboards. So I like to make it easy, you know, like my kids don't come to our school to learn how to draw. So drawing is hard to do, you know, so I let them use tools that kind of makes it easier for them to draw. I like to make projects that are fun for them to do, that are, maybe I shouldn't say easy, I should say accessible, but so that there's this like level of success. You know, you follow like the 5 instructions and you will succeed, you know? So I think accessibility is and achievability are 2 things that will help them feel more confident. And pretty much anything we do, confidence is the key, right? So to instill this confidence in them.
I think I would also add on to that, if I may, that if you are a young person like I was, who realized that you were never going to be a maker, that there were other ways that you can engage in the arts, either as a critic or, you know, a gallerist or an art historian or curator, that there are ways to kind of still be connected to the folks who are great at making objects, even if you don't necessarily have that skill yourself. And I learned that very early on. So it was great to kind of see examples of other folks like, you know, like a Deb Willis, Hank's mother, who is a great artist in her own right, but also is a fantastic critic and historian, right? And or Dr. Kelly Jones, that there are these other avenues to still be connected to the physical art itself.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, just because it's a little bit like the theater, isn't it? Like everyone isn't going to be, you know, like an actress or an actor,
right.
You know,
right.
But there's so many other parts of that field where one can be successful and still be part of it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Like I was going to say Viola Davis. She's my favorite actress in the whole
She's
world.
great.
Love her.
She's great. Leslie and Andrea, I don't know if we're out of time or how we should.
Yeah, we are. But thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation to kind of peer into. And I just have one comment, Lola, there is absolutely no way that you are a day over 30. Like there.
Agreed.
No, I love you. Yeah, I'm never going to grow up. You kidding me? I am never going to be an adult. Thank you. That's a nice way to end.
I am with you on that. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. This was amazing. And I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your weekend. All right.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for everyone that came and tuned in. Appreciate it.
Yes, and for the questions and comments. They were great.
Yes.